Welcome to the Boomer Technician. We're in the shop today because it's winter and there's no car shows to go to. So instead, we're going to take another look at the GM intermittent wiper system, what GM calls the pulse system. And we're going to focus on what they call the pulse board, which is the part of the wiper system that operates the intermittent function. And we talked about this wiper system in an earlier video and kind of gave you an overview of it, but now we're going to focus on that little black piece of plastic that the circuit board goes into and talk about the differences from model to model and some of the troubleshooting methods there are and some of the repair methods there are. I've seen quite a few questions online about the pulse board, and this is a good opportunity to kind of highlight the pulse board design and what you can and can't do to make it work. So with that, let's jump right into it. One thing I forgot to mention in the previous video was how to install the cover on the motor. You want to make sure that the motor arm is right up against the park relay and that this little catch is fully engaged in the slot in the plastic of the park relay. So if this pin is right up against the park relay, the motor is ready to put together, and you want to then take the cover. There's a little switch here that's worked by the cam. You want to rotate the cam so it's pushing down on the switch. If you've got the larger cam, this indentation in the cam needs to be over the top of the switch. And if these pieces are lined up correctly, then you can go ahead and put the two pieces together and the pin will be right where it belongs. I've got two pulse boards here, and they're both off mid-80 Corvette. The black plastic cover goes on the wiper motor, and inside is the board itself, the green circuit board with the gold traces. And you can see that there's a movable cam on each one of them. There's a blue one on the right and this white one on the left. And the cams look quite a bit different, but I'll zoom into these part numbers. You can see the part numbers are identical. So even though the cams change, the function doesn't change, and these parts are interchangeable. So if you've got a pulse board with this light duty cam on it and you can't find one exactly like that, you can switch over to this heavier duty cam, the blue cam, and it'll work fine in your car. The heavy duty cams hold up a little bit better too. These spindly little ones can get busted if you put them in incorrectly, and the pin that drives the cam will actually bust the cam or even break the stem that the cam pivots on. Now we're looking at a pulse board for an A body or a B body. The big difference is it actually mounts the windshield washer pump in the cover, and it also has this additional terminal here. And I talked about it in the previous video, but it's a very, very important point, is that if this terminal or this ground tab here or these terminals here aren't clean, the board isn't going to work correctly. So the first thing you can do if you're having troubles with the board is take it off the motor and clean this terminal, make sure these pads are clean, and make sure this is getting screwed down tight against the body of the motor for grounding, and that this tab doesn't have any corrosion on it. So those are three important points to check before you go troubleshooting any further. Another thing you can do to attempt to repair the board is to resolder the joints. And if you could see a crack in a joint, that'll tell you it's potentially a bad joint. But the best thing to do probably is just to take a good flux solder and warm up all the joints and put a little more solder in there. GM used as little solder as possible, but you can add a bit of solder, and all of the joints are easily accessible because they're on this side of the board, which makes things easy. Just go ahead and give them all a hit of fresh solder, make sure the joints look good, and then see if your problem clears up. Another thing you can check is these pads. The terminals pushing up against them tends to wear on them. It's just a pad that they added a little solder to make it a little thicker. And if we zoom in here, we can see that there's a couple of indentations there. So if you freshen up that solder, that can also help clear up any problems you might be having. If the cleaning and resoldering hasn't fixed the problem, You can remove the board from the cover. You have to remove this clip here. It's a number 10 clip. The easiest thing to do is to cut it. That way you don't tear up the pin it's mounted on. And then once that's out, you can drill out these 3 plastic mounting points here and take the board out. The first thing you have to do is get the cam off, and it's held in with a push pin or a push nut. Generally, I pry up the edge and then cut them off. You sometimes can have some luck locking them off, but that does tend to tear the pin up, and of course that's not a good thing. So there we go. And then that just lifts up. And then we'll take a drill and drill out these 3 points. GM has 3 plastic pins on this board, and they actually melt them down to hold the board in place. So they drill out real easily, but replacing them can be a bit of a challenge. There we go. Here's a board, and we'll flip it over so you can see the components there. There's some very simple electronics on it, a couple of transistors, a number of capacitors, some resistors, and a pair of relays. These are also the contacts here for the wiper motor. So there isn't any complex circuitry in here. There's no integrated chip here, but there is a contact here that the cam operates. Let's change the angle so you can see it a little better. So as that cam makes its way around, it's going to open and close that contact. This contact obviously can get dirty, and the contacts in these relays can get dirty. So to rebuild the board, one of the things you can do is dismount it and clean all the contacts on this back side. But unfortunately, GM uses Plasti-Weld. There's 3 different points here where they melt plastic down to hold the board in place. And it's a little tough to remount the board because these are one-use mounting points. Once you've cleaned them off and taken the board off, you can't reuse them very easily. One thing you could do is to take a board that's designed strictly for a washer pump that doesn't have the intermittent function on it, remove these 3 discs holding the bus bars in place and take the bus bars out, and then you could put the board into this. It'll fit directly on it, and the 3 mounting points haven't been melted yet, so you could melt those down. Another thing you could do is drill some very small holes in these 3 points and then use some screws and washers to hold the board down. You need to make sure the washers don't ground against any of the traces, but as long as they hold the board in place, you'll be able to reuse it. The easiest way to remove these locking discs is to bend the edge up and then just cut the edge with a pair of side cutters. And once it's cut, it comes right off. And then we have a cover that's all ready for our refreshed board. And all 3 pins are ready to melt down. You can use a fancy soldering tip for your soldering iron to melt down plastic, or you can use a bent washer and heat it up in a handy torch, and then just press down on each one of the pins and spread the plastic around, and there you go, a fix just about as good as the original factory mounting. And then to put the cam back on, you just drop it over the shaft. And then you take what Ace Hardware calls a number 10 push nut bolt retainer and a socket, and shove it down on the cam. And it is retained. Simple. Well, that's about everything I know about the pulse board. It's a pretty simple component. In a lot of cases, you can fix a problem with it by either cleaning those terminals, and if that doesn't work, resoldering the connections, particularly if you can see one that's cracked or it's corroded to the point where you don't think it's making an electrical connection any longer. Now, if the board is corroded, the tracers are coming up, then it's shot. You're going to have to find a replacement. But remember, it doesn't matter which cam you find on your replacement board, they'll both work just fine. Just be sure to line everything up before you put the board on the motor. And with that, I just want to remind everybody that no matter where you go, there you are.